in Gabra Michael?
I think it might be, yeah. I think that, as Steve was saying, you know, at this stage of the race, they're staying together. They're quite happy to be in that group. No one wants to really push it on right from the word go. It's too hard, to be honest, and I think they're just settling in and hoping that the pacemaker drops back to them, gives them a little bit of help, and from there on in, if they can... So I think they're going to be running at a reasonable pace here. We'll have to wait until the first 5K checkpoint, but they look very comfortable.
2 Kenyans and 2 Ethiopians, so that's our established pack as we've picked it so far. We're on the money, but certainly I'm a bit surprised. The pack's actually bigger than I thought at this earlier stage, so I'm surprised. Normally it would be down to probably, you know, 5 or 6. So it's great to see that there's a good pack here forming.
You can see Marigu out in front at the moment.
1 and 2.
Sydney, of course, home to the beautiful harbour, and have a look at the Sydney Harbour Bridge. Wonderfully scenic pictures as we bring to you the Blackmores Sydney Running Festival. It's also home to the start of the Sydney to Hobart, and superb at sunset, sunrise, any time of the day. And many celebrations are held across the coat hanger, as it is colloquially known, the Sydney Harbour Bridge. And you can see runners making their way across. It's going to be busy in terms of foot traffic. There's no road traffic obviously on there today, but the train's still making their way across the Sydney Harbour Bridge as we rejoin the marathon, and we've got the leaders out in front, and Marigu is the man to your left of screen with one of the pace setters out there as well, Monis.
Scotty Westcott, yeah, who's very well credentialed, very experienced athlete, and from up at Central Coast. Terrific fella, Scotty.
Just having a look back to that chase group, Yared Sharu is the man in orange, Gabra Michael also in there from Ethiopia, and then the Kenyans in Koidale and also Korea. So they've opened up a little gap here, but nothing to worry about.
Well, Marigu actually is, up until about 2009, was predominantly a half marathon runner. I mean, he was 9th in the World Championships back in 2008, I think. So this is the sort of pace that he will probably enjoy at the first part of the marathon. Whether he can carry it through to the last half is another thing, really. But he's looking very relaxed, I must admit, out there in front. And they don't seem to be worrying too much, the athletes behind, about catching these athletes up.
Scotty's worrying, I can tell you.
They're being conversational, though. They're obviously talking about it. Looks like Marigu's saying, come on, boys, let's step it up here.
Yeah, having been over this course a little bit, the early part, till you get really out to, through Lady Macquarie's, Mrs. Macquarie's chair and that section, that's where you're sort of in more of the suburban street. So I'm not all that worried at this stage. It's a little bit different section. I break this course up a little bit till you sort of get up into the parklands. You really don't need to worry so much now. So you see Scotty waving them up. He's encouraged one to get up there, but I'm not too worried. They can pick that up in a pretty quick.
But I think Scotty's job is to run as fast as he can for as long as he can. And I think probably he's doing that. He's thinking, well, the others are not coming with me. They're wasting me, really. They're not using me as best they can.
Yeah, I race first and worry about the time second, so I'm kind of with the other guys. I just say, well, let it happen, let it unfold early. There's still, you've got the glycogen stores just releasing. There's a lot happening at the moment, so I wouldn't be too worried about that gap at this point, because they'll close that when they want to.
Well, they're running downhill now, so they're getting a bit of momentum here, and they're actually using that to catch them up. So, as you say, I don't think there's much panic going on from runners behind Steve. But even saying that, you can see Scotty's obviously a little bit worried that he's not getting the best out of himself with the pacemaking.
Yeah, exactly. And they may be just a couple of seconds off the time, but at the end of the day, they can pick that up. If you're running on in the second half of the race, they'll pick that up again.
The conditions, it's 11 degrees so far. We expected to get up a little bit higher, obviously, as the sun comes up a little bit higher as well. But beautiful, beautiful conditions to be running in, and it really doesn't get much better than that. There's a slight wind, but not really much to worry about.
That's what you do. You wake up this morning and you get the temperature, and the temperature won't change much, but the wind is then the factor. So you have a bit of a look at the wind. You're conscious of where it will be a tailwind. In fact, you actually probably at the end of the race, when it's getting a bit warm, a bit of headwind, a bit of breeze is actually quite cooling. So that'd be nice.
Well, you can see a couple of the girls in this group as well, making their way through. So a couple of the female runners just keeping in touch with the males at this stage.
They don't have pacemakers per se. They will often run with the males, so they can slot in. It's a combined race, so we all start together here. So first females, normally in the top 20 or 30. They're very highly established, so
now,
don't be surprised.
Talking about females, we've got our first female coming across the line in the half marathon. So Laura James from Cronulla, so she's running around some of her local territory, 27 years of age, and a marvellous effort as she makes her way across the line to become the first woman to finish in the Blackmores half marathon. So well done to Laura. She'll be feeling great coming into the Sydney Opera House.
Up the ramp, yep, ready to get, and she's got the finish in her sights now, so she looks great.
She looks really good. I was going to say, this looks like someone that could run a decent marathon if she starts stepping up, but she's looking very, very comfortable here. There's a big gap between her and everybody else chasing, so she's run really well.
And she's making her way across the line. Just having a look at the time check as we get it. 1:18.38 for her across the line. And that's a marvellous effort for her to be up there and so close to the male leaders.
And Sydney Striders, singlet there, a very strong club up here in Sydney. So they'll be heavily represented. You'll see a lot of those singlets out there today.
So congratulations to Laura James. She's the first woman home in the Blackmores half marathon and very, very happy about it. She cracks open the bottle of water, wanting to rehydrate this early in the morning. There's Lee Troop there just waiting to have a chat with her. So we might talk with Laura and get her thoughts on being the first woman across the line. Lee Troop, of course, our man who is trackside, a three-time Olympian, and he actually won at the half marathon in 2011. So we might get back to Laura very shortly, but still out front, we've got our pacemaker and we've also got Maragu.
They're away again. God, Scotty's going to be I think wearing out himself.
I think Scotty's wearing out his left arm there. He keeps waving them through all the time, but they don't seem to be bothering. He's checking all the time, but I don't think, as you say, it doesn't really matter too much. He's doing a good job, but you can see just in front of him there, the other athlete, or just behind him, I said, the athlete's quite happy to run as a bunch.
So they're going through the drink station there, and you'll see them trying to get mainly water at that end. They might have special drinks early on, but it looks like there's water and a sports drink there in those cups. So,
and a big thank you too to all our sponsors, including 1,200 volunteers in the Suncorp Bank volunteer program, who without this, the event wouldn't happen. So they're manning, you can see them there, the Suncorp volunteers are manning those drink stations and handing out the H2O.
And giving great support, aren't they, Ian? They're yelling and cheering as you go through there. So that vocal support's also really great. Volunteer, we couldn't have the race without them.
Joseph Maragu, we can see some of the times there from Barcelona, Prague, again back at Barcelona, and also San Diego. So he's up there as far as the world marks go.
He's a 2.8 man, and that's a good run. Yeah, obviously he's the one to watch. He's looking very comfortable out there, just loping along next to Scotty. And he's doing his own rhythm. I think, funny enough, with marathon running, Steve, you find that you have to get into your natural rhythm, don't you? You can't run. In fact, sometimes, I know it's ridiculous to say, but sometimes harder to run slower.
It can be, especially if you're in a pack and you're getting chopped. If you're sitting, you want to sit behind and let someone else do the work, but that can sometimes just affect your rhythm and your stride. So different. Sometimes, especially the Kenyans, are quite tall and have a very loping stride, but they seem pretty compact today. And the Ethiopians more compact normally, so we're probably seeing that here. Very efficient, and that's the key with the marathon. It's to be efficient over the ground.
Now, what's happened here, because obviously they've come back together, has Maragu and the pacemaker slowed slightly, or have the boys behind decided, okay, let's step it up?
I think this is where, like I mentioned, I think they're sort of through that first 5K and they've probably decided, right, we're into the more the street running now, so let's just establish. They've got rid of a couple of other runners, so the pack's dwindled a bit and they've formed up again now.
And I think, like we said at the beginning, a lot of them perhaps didn't do much of a warm-up, so they treat the first sort of 5K almost as like getting into your rhythm, getting your system working well, economically, just doing as little as possible prior to maybe the main race, which goes on in the latter part of the marathon.
Exactly, and often now they will have a coffee or something to just delay the glycogen release. So that first 5K, you're almost not feeling great, to be honest, and you get going about now.
You can see the Archibald Fountain just down to the bottom left there, and they will make their way down Art Gallery Road. It is a scenic vista like no other. Sydney certainly turning it on this morning as they turn around to the left to head down Art Gallery Road along to Mrs. Macquarie's chair, and it is a fairly casual, easy gait at this stage for our lead runners.
Oh, don't be under any illusions, Ian. They'd still be running just under 20 kilometres an hour. So whilst they look pretty relaxed, these guys would still be running at you know, they're probably running at 3:05, 3:06 kilometre pace, so they're still moving along.
So what you're saying is I've got no chance of keeping up. Even on a bike I'd be battling, I think, to keep up with these guys. And you can see the wheelchairs going back the other way. So they started before our marathon runners started, and they've been all the way down to Mrs Macquarie's chair. We're on our Gallery Road now, and they're now making the return leg on the way back. So will they get any indication of where they are in comparison to the wheelchair athletes?
Oh, a little bit, but because of the hills on the course, it's probably hard to really get too much of a gauge off that, so we might miss that. But I'll certainly be trying to check where the other athletes are when they turn, no doubt about that. So they'll certainly be aware of that down at Mrs Macquarie's chair when they do the U-turn around. They'll be able to get a gauge of how far they are ahead of the next group, chasing group, and that's always important.
The Art Gallery of New South Wales displays an extensive collection of Australian art. You can see it there, including one of the largest galleries of Aboriginal art in the country, alongside the European Masters. There's Asian treasures, leading local and international contemporary art there. It hosts the annual Archibald Prize and Art Express as well, with more than 100,000 art students visiting there each and every year. So it's a terrific, iconic institution here at Sydney, is the Art Gallery, as we rejoin our leaders there. And Joseph Maragu, he's the man who's doing the work at this stage.
Well, he should do, really. I mean, he's a sub-60-minute man for the half marathon, so he is, if you can call it that, probably one of the fastest men in the marathon field here today. But it is a marathon, not half marathon, so he's got to hold back a little bit, I think, maybe.
Well, I think we're getting a split through there, just over 16 minutes through 5K, so that's why Scotty and would be a little bit worried, because I think they're probably looking at running under 3:10. That's just over 3. It's about 3:12 or a little bit slower than that. So I think they're probably a little bit off the pace at the moment. That's why he's panicking. So there's no surprises there.
Amongst the chase group, we've got Koitale, Korea, the two Kenyan runners in there as well. Yared Sharu, he's the man in orange from Ethiopia. It looks like Scotty's having a chat to the motorcycle pilot as well, just saying, come on, what are we doing here? Let's get a wriggle on.
And Ben Kanucha, I think, and Tanimoto, Japanese. So Frenchman, Japanese as well. We should also focus only on the Ethiopians and Kenyans. So there's certainly a mix of international athletes here.
Lucky Mahali in there as well, the South African runner too. So this is the group. They've got a little bit of separation, but it's only 10 or 15 metres just further down the road to Joseph Maragu and also to Scott Westacott. But beautiful as we head down to Mrs Macquarie's chair. Wonderfully scenic running. I'm tipping the guys aren't necessarily taking in the scenery though at this stage.
No, you might be a little bit early on.
Glance?
Just to have a glance across. I tried to disassociate a little bit, because if you're concentrating that hard for 2+ hours, that can be very taxing. So you try and absorb a little bit of it. Occasionally you might hear a comment from the side or look across and say, what a beautiful botanical gardens we've got here.
And I think also, to a certain extent, when you're running in a group, it helps as well, doesn't it? If you're on your own out in front, the concentration levels are so much harder. Whereas if you're in a group, you're jogging along, you're looking around and you're watching other people, you don't perhaps have that same sort of level of concentration. And I think concentration in terms of effort is a bit like the physical thing. You can't do it too early, too much, really.
That's right, exactly. And other people, I often get asked about, talking and that and conversation. There's not a lot of conversation, because you are breathing at a pretty high level, and, you're concentrating mainly on the run. So there's not a lot of idle chatter. Normally it'd be pretty serious. If you're going to say something, you don't waste your words. You're going to comment about something that's specific to the race. You're not kind of going, oh, isn't that a beautiful view out there just off to our left, the Sydney Harbour Bridge. You're not chatting about that, unfortunately.
So you're not stopping to take a little photo. You can tweet later maybe and say, here we are, boys, on the way to... You can see the point there, Mrs Macquarie.
Let's be fair, though. The top level athletes might not be doing it, but the some behind might be doing exactly that. They might be stopping at all the points and taking photographs to prove they've been here and done the marathon. Yeah.
As they make their way around. Now, they will head back up the other way. So you talked about some of the ones that are maybe the more average weekend warrior runners that aren't necessarily the elite, but they will get a gauge, because these runners, you can hear the cheers of the crowd as well. These runners and our volunteers for Suncorp, the runners will be making their way back, so they will cross over. So if you are a club runner or someone who's doing the marathon for the first time, you'll get a gauge of how fast these boys are.
But not only that, it's one of the few events in the world, well, one of the few, I suppose, sporting events in the world where you can actually take part with the elite athletes. You can actually line up with some of the greatest runners in the world, and you're in the same race as them. So it's a fantastic thing to be involved with.
And I love it on parts of the course where you are interacting with the other runners. It's great for everybody. It is a terrific part.
The Sydney Opera House in the background, that is the finish line that these people are trying to get to.